It seems like they've not lost in 10 years. That was Tony Kornheiser from ESPN, Around the Horn. Been watching that show for a very long time. He had that to say about the Dogs, and it has been a long time since they lost. It was the Alabama game and the SEC championship in 2021. That's a long time ago, a couple seasons ago. But him and Michael Wilbon, who of course started working at the Washington Post and had an opportunity to work for ESPN Around the Horn, the first sort of show like that. Um, they were talking about Georgia, and they, of course, had to start talking about Alabama too. And both were saying everybody wants to see Georgia play Alabama, but that is the prevailing national thought: is Georgia's not lost in forever, and I cannot wait to see Georgia play Alabama. Well, but those things could change this weekend. I mean, Georgia got to beat Ole Miss before they get to playing Alabama. Alabama can still not win the West, the way I understand it, but it's very narrow. They would have to lose twice, and Ole Miss would have to continue to win. I mean, it's very likely that both Georgia and Bama will be in the SEC championship game on the first weekend of December, the first Saturday of December. In fact, the SEC sent out credential. They already asked me to apply for credentials, so they're probably doing that to a few schools, people who cover those schools. But I think it doesn't. It feels like they have not lost in forever because they've not. 10 years, I don't know about that part, but this is not at all by accident or mistake or anything like that. Um, I was watching something where Kirby was talking about gap control earlier today, and it's not surprising that Georgia is where they're at right now. Why? Well, they have a very good head coach. I mean, that's pretty clear. Number two, their players are, if not the best, certainly in the top three. Number three, they've got tremendous discipline, and they develop players. And all of those things are what you need to have when you are doing what Georgia's doing right now and doing what Alabama has done in the past. I can't speak to Nebraska, but this run from the Dogs, it doesn't feel like it's necessarily ending this season. They are. Let me look real quick. I think Michigan and them keep going back and forth on who's going to be the Las Vegas keeps going back and forth on who the betting favorite. Yeah. See, it's about the same for Georgia and Michigan at 250. It depends on which service you look at. Some of them have Michigan at 220, but the sort of more reputable ones have them both at 250. So you're looking at that. They're both, pretty solid favorites to win the national championship. If we get to a situation where, Georgia and Michigan are playing for the national championship, everybody's going to act like we were going to have this all along. That is not the case. I mean, those were two of the four teams coming into this that people really felt like would have good years. But it wasn't always, for sure it's going to be Michigan and Georgia. I mean, Ohio State has had a very good season. Oregon, for sure, has had a good season. And Florida State. What's so curious is Las Vegas is definitely picking up on vibes here. Washington, UW, who has beaten Oregon, is several rows below where the Ducks are in terms of winning the national championship, in terms of probability and bets. And obviously, once you get past Washington, it's just you've fallen off a cliff. LSU, Oklahoma, Penn State, Notre Dame, those teams are not going to win the national championship. After Notre Dame is Ole Miss. Texas falling behind Alabama, a team they beat almost, double the odds, maybe not double the odds that Alabama has to win it. But when you say, hey, Georgia, it feels like the Dogs haven't lost in forever. It's been a long time. I mean, this season, 21 was really the most dominant that we've seen Georgia. And yet they had, bookends of the non-playoff season with a really difficult game against Clemson and then the challenging game, and then the loss to Alabama. So those were, those were both non-ideal situations, but those both good, both those games, in both of those games, Georgia, had to struggle, and of course they lost. They lost in the Alabama game. Now, what did that, what did that do? What did that get them? To me, it allowed them to understand that they couldn't just roll the ball out there to win. And, that part of it, I think, for Georgia, it felt like they could just roll it out there and win at the time. But, Alabama corrected them very quickly on that front. Hey, listen, this is a great time for college football fans. This is one look of what you can get from our friends at EcoPoly. I'm sitting in their chair right now. You saw it a little bit earlier. You can get 15% off any order and free shipping. As you can see, this chair right here is almost 40 pounds. That is a good savings in shipping. And I would add that the 40 pounds means it's a sturdy piece of furniture. You're going to have it outside. You can use it inside. I use it inside. I use it outside. You can do both. Now, you can switch up the colors. You can make this, however you want. Maybe a little less obvious Georgia colors, if you will. But I mean, look, this is a Georgia audience. That would go really nice in a man cave or a woman cave, whatever you want to call it. Hey, take advantage of this offer we've got from our friends and our partners over at EcoPoly in the heart of Georgia, made with completely recycled plastics, a 20-year warranty. This is a great deal. It's an awesome Christmas gift. It's not too late to order for Christmas, so make sure you're taking advantage of that today. They'll have some more deals coming up that we're going to get to, but for now, make sure you're taking advantage of that 15% off and free shipping. Is Georgia going to take advantage of their situation Saturday night against the Rebels? They're coming into this as like a 10.5, 11.5 point favorite. Georgia's not had a lot of big home games at night lately, like in the grand scheme of things. You had Notre Dame was a top 10 matchup. I think you have to go back almost to Clemson in 1982 for a top 10 matchup in Athens. Now, Auburn in 2020 was a top 10 matchup, and Auburn got blitzed, but that was not a live Sanford crowd. That was about a fourth of the stadium because of COVID restrictions. So I think, the crowd is going to have to matter Saturday night. If you want Tony Kornheiser to continue to say it seems like they've not lost in 10 years, you're going to need some help from this Sanford crowd. And there's no reason, there's no explanation, there's no excuses to the reason why Georgia shouldn't be able to do all they want to do with the crowd. It should affect the Rebels. They are a team that commits penalties higher than the normal team, certainly higher than top 10 teams. And then they're going on the road to Sanford. So I'm not sure if there's a more difficult place to play in the SEC. Tiger Stadium, Neyland Stadium, Tuscaloosa, Sanford. Those are all very challenging, very large places to play. Auburn for sure too, and that's what Ole Miss is going into. They had a struggle and lost at Alabama. They won but struggled at Auburn in terms of that game. It was a 7-point game with Auburn. Now they're going to Georgia. Can this crowd matter? We're going to see. I mean, if you're going to the game, you have a role in this thing. So Ole Miss has got a really big challenge. Lane Kiffin was talking about it earlier this week. Matt's going to talk about this later today, but he is definitely playing possum here. Here's what his quote was. We've got a gigantic challenge ahead of us, going to play the number one team in the country at their place at night. The last time someone beat them over there, it was 5 years ago. I can't ask the last coach to beat them because he's on their staff. There aren't a lot of questions. There aren't a lot of answers out there about how to beat those guys in Athens. We have to have a really good week at practice. They have elite players, elite staff, and we're playing them on the road. What's the hardest thing to pull off? This is it. He goes on to talk about Kirby has done obviously an unbelievable job. They've got a lot of great players, and their quarterback plays really well. He's smart and has a great arm. They added 2 receivers from the portal to strengthen their position out there. They're as great as advertised. When they have to rise up, they do. This isn't their first rodeo playing big games. And then he goes on to say, we're playing with house money. Nobody expects us to win. We're double-digit underdogs. We're just going over to see what happens. So he's going full Lou Holtz, going 100%. Well, really more Lou Holtz than Vince Dooley. But he's playing possum, and look, Lane. Ole Miss can totally win this game. It's not at all out of the question that they win this game. Period. Georgia, these last 3 regular season games are going to be a different challenge each time. You've got the Rebels, top 10 team coming into Athens. That's a challenging game. You've got to go to Tennessee, where you're still going to be favored, but you're playing at Tennessee. That's a challenge. And then Georgia Tech's playing better. I don't anticipate and wouldn't bet that Georgia Tech's going to beat Georgia. I would not do that. But they are playing better, and we'll just see what they've got in store when Georgia goes to Atlanta. Could the Dogs be looking forward too much? I don't know. But these last 3 games, from here on out, for the rest of this season, there's no easy game. I don't think you can really personally say, oh, Georgia Tech, that'll be an easy game. Not the way that, Brent Key has shown to me that he's got Georgia Tech as a functional football team. Not every weekend. You don't lose to Power 5, non-Power 5 schools by, almost 20, and you're functioning well every weekend. But he's beating a ranked team again. So, we'll just see. But I think this weekend for Georgia, if they'll just do what they're supposed to do, every player, then they'll win. I don't know how Ole Miss will play. They can't play on defense like they did against Texas A&M. They'll get run out of the ballpark. So it is challenging, but Lane's playing possum. Tony Kornheiser doesn't remember the last time the Dogs lost, and honestly, it's been a long time.